Good evening and welcome to the Citrus Heights Planning Commission meeting of September 28th. It is 7 o'clock and I call this meeting to order. Okay. Let's see, Commissioner Sheeler, would you care to lead us in the pledge, please?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? It's okay? All right. Very good. Madam Secretary, would you take the roll call, please?
Commissioner Engel is absent. Commissioner Magnavowski.
Here.
Commissioner Nishimura.
Here.
Commissioner Turner Mike is absent. Commissioner Sheeler.
Here.
Vice Chair Van Duker.
Here.
Chair Flowers.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Consent calendar, approval of minutes for August 10th, 2022.
Thank you. Commissioners, have you had a chance to review the minutes from the August 10th meeting? Any amendments, changes? May we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Did we get a second?
I second.
Oh,
Magnowski.
thank you.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
I abstain from not being at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. And next item, please.
Public comment. Under Public Comment Code Section 54954.3, members of the audience may address the commission on any agenda item within the jurisdiction of the commission or on any agenda item. Those wishing to speak on non-agenda items will be called upon at the beginning of the meeting. Those wishing to speak for or against an agenda item will be called upon after the presentation by the City Planning Department and the applicant for that agenda item.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers or non-agenda items this evening? Okay, next item, please.
That's going to be item A, 5A, public hearing, Raising Cane's parcel map, 7804 Greenback Lane, PLN 2214. The current proposal would like to split the existing 5-acre parcel into two parcels, 4.12 and 0.88 acres respectively. The proposed parcels are based on the existing lease lines held between Raising Cane's and the current property owner. Access easements will be required after the map has been recorded. No physical changes will be proposed to the property. No existing easements shall be affected by the proposal lot split. Project planner Eric Singer.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Commissioners. Chair. So as Stacy said, we'll be discussing the proposed parcel map for the Raising Cane's property at 7804 Greenback. The two actions you're going to be considering tonight are determining that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA per section 15315 regarding minor land divisions, and ultimately approving the tentative parcel map to split the 5-acre parcel into two. Now, this is the subject site. As mentioned, it's a 5-acre parcel that fronts Greenback Lane to the north and Birdcage Street to the west. This map is actually oriented where north is pointing right. Apologies for the lack of a north arrow. The southern end of the parcel is occupied by Hobby Lobby. The north end occupied by the Raising Cane's drive-through that was approved by this body at the December 9th, 2021 meeting. Sorry, that might have been 2020, typo there. Parcel is surrounded by commercial retail uses to the north, east, and south, with Birdcage Village Apartments to the west. So again, proposing to split the existing 5-acre parcel into two, 4.12 and 0.88 acres respectively. There are no physical changes proposed to the site. Access easements and any other utility easements must be recorded after the map is recorded and subsequently sold, as the property owner cannot grant easements to themselves. And after review, staff found that this parcel map met all the requirements of the Subdivision Map Act. There is one general plan policy in particular that staff had to address during the review of this particular parcel map, and it has to do with policy 9.5. This was passed by City Council to ultimately discourage the creation of any new parcels within existing commercial centers if such creation might hinder the viability and or future redevelopment of the center. So the findings that that staff made in this regard that kind of prove that it would not likely hinder the future redevelopment of the center are as follows. One, the parcel map is limited to existing infrastructure, existing buildings, existing easements, et cetera, along existing lease lines. No physical changes are proposed beyond what has already been built. The site itself is at the periphery of the shopping center in question, so the marketplace at Birdcage. Not centrally located, it's not in the heart of the marketplace. The existing tenants have long-term leases. They're highly unlikely to vacate. And just based on those existing uses, redevelopment is unlikely, including based on things like the parking requirements for the existing uses are pretty much at their absolute maximum. So there is very little likelihood for the ability to add any additional square footage or buildings onto the site. Last but not least, the city itself does not have a terribly long history of mass-scale redevelopment of shopping centers outside of, the Sunrise Village, for example. That's more of kind of a refacing of an existing center, maybe some new additional pad buildings, but ultimately not kind of a massive shift in the way that land is being used. Short of doing something as drastic as like the Sunrise Tomorrow specific plan, staff finds that it's highly unlikely that this specific site would have the potential for redevelopment into anything other than the current uses that are there. Last but not least, these are the proposed motions that staff is recommending. The applicant's engineer is here tonight and is available to answer any questions that the commission may have, and otherwise I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We have any clarifying questions from the staff tonight?
I have a question. Doing these parcel splits, how does it affect the property values and property taxes? We're losing a long-term lease, the income from that. How is the city going to be losing any money by splitting this parcel?
Unfortunately, I am not privy to that information. I do not know. There was no pro forma or anything that was submitted to indicate what the current revenue is versus what future revenues might look like. So,
if I can, Commissioner Shimura, generally when properties are sold, they're reassessed. So that does change the value. I can't talk to what the lease value was, but generally at the point of sale, it's reassessed, and that's a higher value that brings in more property tax for the city.
Any other questions? All right. And I understand we have the applicant here, so I'll open the public hearing. If there's anything you'd like to add, you're welcome to come to the mic and do so now. No? Oh. Okay, thank you, thank you. I will then close the public hearing. Very good. And I guess we'll need a motion.
I will make a motion to adopt Resolution 22, determining the project is categorically exempt from CEQA per Section 15315 minor land divisions of the California Environmental Quality Act.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. May I have a second motion, please?
I'll move to approve a tentative parcel map to allow the division of an existing 5-acre parcel into two parcels, 4.12 and 0.88 acres in size for an existing Raising Cane's drive-through restaurant located at 7804 Greenback Lane as shown in Exhibit B, subject to the findings listed in the staff report and the conditions contained provided as shown in Exhibit C.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please.
Zoning Code Amendment, Sunrise Marketplace, SMP, PLN 22-22. The proposed amendment to the zoning code would establish an overlay that would prohibit certain automotive-focused land uses, including but not limited to gas stations, service stations, car washes, and vehicle service repairs within Sunrise Marketplace overlay. Project planner, Allison Bermudez.
Excuse me, Chair Flowers, I am going to recuse myself from this decision because my family business is in the overlay zone.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Van Duker.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Allison Bermudez with the Planning Division here, and my partner over there, Casey, will also assist me in this presentation. We got quite a few slides to go through. So thank you for having us here to hear this item tonight. So what we're going to talk about is what is proposed. We're going to talk about what an overlay zone is, what are the specific changes, what properties are included in this overlay, and we'll talk about why it's being proposed and why it's beneficial. We'll talk about the public outreach component that was completed with this project, and then we'll have our discussion and public comment. This item is here for your review, and your recommendation will be taken to the City Council. So your decision tonight is not final. It will be taken to the City Council as a recommendation. What is proposed? We are proposing to add a new section to our zoning code. The zoning code contains how development occurs in the city, and so we're proposing to add a new section entitled the Sunrise Marketplace Overlay Zone. And this section, to be added to the code, will refine what the allowed land uses are in this overlay area that we're going to be discussing. I'd also amend the zoning map to add the overlay boundary for showing the properties that are within that overlay zone. So we'll get into detail of what all that means. So an overlay zone, a tool that you haven't seen before. It's commonly used in land use and zoning purposes, and it's really a zoning layer that's added over the top of the existing zone. So that image there on the right kind of talks about what we're doing. So you know there's general planned, general land use categories that are applied to properties. And then on top of that, we have our more specific zoning standards, which is the zoning map. And that even gets more refined. And then this overlay zone is another layer that's added on top of that. So the zoning map, the zones are contributed or managed by the zoning code and what those zones allowed. This overlay then even goes a little bit more refined that's on top. So it's really like a 3-layer zoning, and this is adding that third. So what we're talking about are properties. They're not being rezoned, they're just being further refined about what's being used in that area. So if the property is zoned SC for shopping center and it has an overlay on it, it's still zoned SC. It's just we have to refer to the overlay for more specifics. The overlay we're proposing tonight will all the existing uses that are currently allowed, either what we call permitted use, they're permitted by right, or they're conditionally permitted, means they would have to come before your body for a use permit, remain as they are today. So all these properties, if they have a permitted use or conditional use, they remain in place, with the exception of the ones we're going to talk about tonight. So the overlay will have a prohibition of certain uses, including gas stations, so no new gas stations. The zoning code calls it service stations. Vehicle services, what the zoning code refers to as major vehicle services, so that's going to include towing, collision, transmission, repair, or similar activities. Vehicle service minor, which includes car washes, brake replacement stations, detailing, minor tune-ups, or similar. And then in addition, storage facilities like personal storage, mini storage would be prohibited, and ambulance and taxi transportation centers. So those uses that are allowed on some properties within this overlay zone would no longer be allowed. This would be for new businesses within this zone that we're going to talk about. So this is the zoning map here, and it's a snippet of the marketplace area that we're referring to. The red boundary is the proposed overlay boundary. It follows or mimics the existing Sunrise Marketplace Business District. It just follows that same boundary, with the exception that, as you can see, the carve-out, the Sunrise Mall is not included in this, and that's because if you recall the Sunrise Tomorrow specific plan, it did this same thing that we're doing here. It had very specific uses that were added for the Sunrise Mall property, and then some that were prohibited through that specific plan process. So that, because of that, is a more detailed specific plan. It was carved out of this boundary. But the red line then does follow the existing marketplace boundary. As you look at that, you can see the different colors, and each of those colors represent a different zone. So we have some turquoise color, which is our BP, or our business professional or office zone. The pink is what we call the shopping center, the SC zone, and then some blue for LC, or limited commercial. So there is really existing 3 different zones, land use zones in this boundary. And so what we'll do, it'll put this overlay over those 3 zones. The zoning table will still remain, except that within those zones, those uses that we previously talked about would no longer be allowed. So if you look at each of those designations, the BP zone, or actually this is not impacting any of those properties because the uses that we're prohibiting are not allowed in a BP zone as they stand today. But it's just, there are some BP zone properties within this boundary. The limited commercial zone, there was 4 of those 5 uses that would no longer be allowed. One of the 5th use is not currently allowed with LC zone. So that's the change to the property zone to LC, and then same on the SC zone. There's one of the uses that's not allowed in the SC zone that still will not be allowed in addition to the 4 uses. Any questions so far? All right, and this is just some snippets just to show you this is what we use. This is out of our zoning book. So this is our land use tables. So this has wide categories of specific uses, of all the different activities that would occur in the city, and then the columns represent the different zoning districts. So you can see there are a number of uses in our table, and then we look at this. If somebody wants to do a business, let's say they want to have a theater, we would look at theater, and then we look at the zoning column that the property is in, and it will tell us if it's permitted, if it's conditionally permitted, or it's not allowed. So the change would be this table would still remain, except those uses that we're talking about that are in the overlay would not be allowed in that zone. But they would still be allowed in that zone if it's outside that boundary. And we had questions about what existing businesses. So some of the business activities that we talked about currently do exist in the overlay. The code will have a specific provision. It does not make those businesses in violation of any sort. They are legal business. They can remain in perpetuity. They do not have to close or relocate. They could even sell their business to a new owner. They may remain. There's no impact. We also do have a provision in the code that allows them to expand. So they want to add, maybe enlarge their building or do something different. Since they're an existing legal business, they will remain in place, do not have to close or relocate, and then they can still maintain their business and expand.
And I'll talk a little bit about the why we're here. As you all know, as we did the Sunrise Tomorrow specific plan, we did a lot of outreach and engagement about what the vision is for that particular site. And we know that the community wants to change. They want to see something vibrant and exciting, and the uses that make that up are likely to spill out. So right now what we're seeing is certain uses that are more catered to the existing travel patterns that we have in the city. So this is proposed to help limit some of the uses that are catering to those passing through the city. As you can see through the table on the right, about 2/3 of the trip that go down Sunrise or Greenback do not start or stop in the city citrus heights. So they're using our roadways, they're adding traffic, they're giving air pollution, all that stuff we're taking on with not a lot of benefit. We also know on the bottom chart shows the income distribution of those folks coming by in the city, so they have a pretty high income levels. We just need to give them a reason to stop. So part of that involves preserving what limited land we have available. As you all know, we're 98% built out, means every decision that we make regarding land use can have ramifications in the long term. Most of these businesses are around for a long time once they're in, and they're going to be around, in perpetuity for the most part. So it's really important that we're making decisions that are contributing to our goals and not detracting from those goals. We also know that some of these certain uses can really impact the attractiveness of bringing other uses in that are sensitive to those uses. And I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. So some of the challenges of the uses that are proposed to be prohibited are listed here, and I'll kind of just walk through each of them. So back to the Sunrise Tomorrow idea and what I call the spillover effect. We're likely to see the vision that is provided for Sunrise Tomorrow to spill out throughout the marketplace, and we want to make sure we have adequate land to support that. And that land needs to have a certain vibe, for lack of a better term. It needs to be something where people want to get out of their cars and stop, shop, eat, dine, the things that we're envisioning. So an example I think of is if you're driving down Sunrise Boulevard outside the city and you're driving through Gold River, the vibe's pretty nice. It looks pretty nice. Then you go over 50 over the freeway, the vibe changes. And why is that? Well, it's the land use changes. Those land uses do not make it very inviting to come in. Secondly, on the challenge of some of these land uses is noise. Things like speakers and vacuums and equipment and blower dryers, those can be quite loud. So that limits who wants to be next to that. If you're looking for a mixed use with housing, you're really limiting where you can go if you're fighting the noise that goes along with that. Similarly, air quality and odor. Certain uses like gas stations have an odor or smell, and air quality impacts. In fact, ARB recommends that at least 300-foot separation from sensitive uses like residential from a gas station. Loitering, some of these uses, they close up shop, or they sell alcohol, or they have areas where people can congregate, and that has been a problem in the past and may continue to be a problem. Certain uses are like mini storage, for example, rely on security fencing, which doesn't really cry an invitation to come in either. Transit impacts, we know that bus rapid transit is proposed on Sunrise Boulevard in the future by RT. We designed Sunrise Tomorrow to specifically accommodate bus rapid transit in the future. So having transit supportive land uses where people are walking and biking and using transit is very important to the success of systems like that. And then last but not least, fiscal impacts. Commissioner Schimmer asked about tax revenue generated from certain uses, and we know certain uses generate more tax revenue than others. Uses that are more service-oriented, we're not getting sales tax from generally. We're also, from a property tax perspective, that we would get from, say, a car wash or mini storage, it's going to be nominal. The city gets about 8 cents per dollar of property tax once we start collecting our property tax here in the near future. Next slide, please. So these are just a few examples of similar land uses outside the city, trying to illustrate, what's hard to explain is, and again, I'll come back to the vibe of what comes into our most important corridor. The Sunrise Boulevard corridor is very important from our economic development perspective. So having uses like this, or even if they're a little bit nicer, they change how it feels as you come into the corridor. So what is the benefit of the overlay? Really, it helps support that community vision that is coming with Sunrise Tomorrow. It enables us to protect valuable land and our limited availability of land to make sure that we have capacity to grow and grow in the right direction to help support Sunrise Tomorrow rather than detract from it. As we discussed, when we have new uses, there's long-term impacts. There's gas stations and citrus sites that have been here for 50 years and they're not going anywhere soon. They're hard to change over. They're hard to locate against. They make it even harder to lease land adjacent to them. So that is something to factor in. And then, especially along our busy corridors, protecting those key sites and changing the view of what it looks like is really important to encourage people to stop and shop and not just get gas and pull back onto the road and go to Rancho Cordova or Roseville. In terms of economic vitality, as Ali mentioned, there are a variety of uses that are allowed still within the corridor. We're really focused on limiting those that have a negative land use impact on the surrounding land uses. But in addition to that, we have a pretty robust economic development team that's ramping up a number of programs. Those of you who know Megan Huber, they're working on one of the council's strategic work plan ideas is to create using ARPA funds, a program where we can do business recruitment and attraction grants. So that's something that she's working on. They'll be probably coming to the council in the next 12 months or sooner to help bring in businesses to these sites that have been vacant for a while.
All right, just to cover the outreach a little bit, when we started this process, we did set up a dedicated web page, so citrusheights.net/SMP overlay has been up. It's had information, FAQs about what's proposed. It's had the draft ordinance, so that's been in place. We did some one-on-one outreach with participants within the marketplace. Casey visited all the neighborhood associations surrounding the marketplace. I think there was 4 of them. We did a presentation to the Sunrise Marketplace Board and the Chamber of Commerce Board. And then through our normal processes, we did mail all owners within 500 feet over the overlay boundary. We published in the newspaper. We did receive comments. Those were included in your packet. A few came in even after the packet was distributed, so those, I did email those out to you, as well as we provided you printed copies at your seat tonight. So we have done as much, extensive outreach to make sure that all the interested parties were aware of what was proposed. So we'll get into the discussion, but I just want to remind you how this part will flow. So we've made our presentation. In a moment, we can discuss. You can ask us questions, and Casey and I will be happy to answer. And then when you're ready to take public comment, you'll open the public comment period, receive their comments. You'll close the public hearing. We can wrap up any other discussions or questions that they brought up that we can answer. And then at the end, we'll be asking you for a vote and a recommendation. You're open to modify. This is a proposal. You can modify what we have proposed. This is the staff's recommendation. If you do suggest any modifications or changes, we just ask for specific reasonings and the details of that, because we do take this to the city council and we want to make sure that we're representing your thoughts and input appropriately. The city council is expected to hear this item. We have it tentatively scheduled for October 27th, and they will be making the final decision. Since this is really an ordinance and a map amendment, those are actions that they have to take final steps on. So that's why yours is just a recommendation. So that's how it will flow tonight. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
I do. On the grandfathered uses, are they interchangeable? Like, say, the body shop on Sunrise or Greenback on Arcadia, say they were closed and wanted to open a gas station, could they do that?
No, they could not, because that gas station would be the new use and the prohibited use. They could remain a collision body repair with no issue, but they could not change uses. So it is protecting the uses that are now could become prohibited. Those may remain, but they couldn't introduce a new use that's prohibited.
So the Shell station cannot become a body shop?
The Shell station could not be, correct.
Okay. Where does, all this is auto-intensive uses, where does public storage come in?
And that's mainly a visual, as Stacy or as Casey showed some of those pictures about what mini storages are. Usually solid wall fencing surrounded, and not the visual impact or the visual representation that we are seeking along the boulevard.
So like by that same token, say Scott's Econo Loop closed down on Arcadia, they couldn't turn that into a public storage unit?
Correct.
I believe that in that zone, mini storage is also not allowed at this time as well.
Okay, thank you. And I know it's not part of the the overlay is done, including Sunrise Mall, nothing would change, say SMP Sunrise Marketplace were dissolved, everything would remain the same, the whole zoning area would remain the same?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Allison. So if the ownership changes on any of the establishments that are grandfathered in, and they decide to move forward with the new ownership, can the establishment remain the same, or would they have to reinvent that particular?
No, the existing owner could sell their business, could change owners without any impact. The business establishment may remain.
Okay, so gas station could remain a gas station?
Yes.
Okay.
Does the last prohibition, ambulance, taxi, and specialized transportation facility, that in no way impacts the anticipated bus operations associated with Sunrise Mall?
No, that's
We don't
a
see
different
any-
use. So the transit center wouldn't be a part of that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I do have another question. This says service stations, gas stations. What if in the future there become charging stations?
I think from our perspective right now, generally the charging stations are an accessory use to whatever use is there. You're not seeing, at least at this point, a charging station that essentially replaces a gas station where it's nothing but charging stations. I think it's a valid point and something to consider. I think something that we'd like to do is look at best practices in that and bring something back as part of the zoning code later on. It probably doesn't have the same impacts exactly as a gas station, but they may have similar. So I think it's worth exploring in the future. But I think at this point, we're not seeing pressure for those type of uses like we are for the gas stations, car washes, and sort of things.
So that was my question as well, the electric charging stations in the future. So what you're saying is they're allowed with this overlay at this time?
Yeah, currently they're not differentiated from the primary use. We consider them accessory to, if it's a restaurant, it's accessory to that. So and I think that's something that we'll do in the near future is maybe separately define them and discuss any standards that need to be applicable to them. It's still kind of in its infancy, so I think we need to do some digging on that.
Cool, thank you.
In regards to the public storage, and I'm thinking a little bit maybe out in the future, but we've only really seen one type of public storage modeled at this point, and it's generally the typical drive-in with different size units and containers, usually all on one level. Should that change in the future where they have maybe stackable unit type areas or something like that? Would there be any consideration of that if in the future we've got some sort of modern looking storage units or facilities?
Right now, the way it's proposed, no, but that doesn't mean it's not chiseled in stone. That's all this, we can bring it to the Planning Commission and Council and can change again. But I think at this point, the type of mini storage that we're seeing interest in is kind of the standard, not that exciting, not really drawing people in that like we'd like to see here. So I think at this point, we recommend, keeping it as is.
Keeping that on there, okay.
So say Scott's Econo Loop closed down, because I could see a need for public storage with the size of those lots at Mitchell Farms. I mean, if I had a boat, you couldn't park it in that lot. If there were, that whole area back by, because with gas engines will be obsolete, there's not gonna be a whole need for having that Econo Loop there, and property owners could possibly use that as a storage, as long as it were sightly, maybe being, you keep your boat there, but it'd have to be enclosed, but that could be amended down the road.
It could be. Anything could be amended. I think it's important to look at the context of where it's at, and this is the marketplace. This is where we want people to come shop, spend money, dine, that sort of thing. So our perspective is making sure that the uses are contributing to that, not detracting from that.
I completely agree with Casey's comments. I mean, I think it would be an absolute shame to take what we consider the primary marketing corridor in Citrus Heights and even consider something even a nice looking, and they do make, I have seen building conversions for public storage and whatever else. You know, when you look at the revenue that is going to come off of that and the benefit to the community, you know, I think you could find other places to put it within Citrus Heights, and not impact this, what I think is a very important area to improve the Citrus Heights community overall.
Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. This time I'll open the public hearing, and we do have some speaker forms here, and so, oh, just added another one. All right, they're flying in as we speak. So another one coming, all right. Well, we have 6 of these, and so we are going to limit them to 3 minutes each. So as I call your name, you can come to the podium, please, and please state your name for the record. And we'll put a timer on, and you'll have 3 minutes, and we would just ask that you close your comments after that 3 minutes. I'd also like to remind you that this is an opportunity for you to share. We will not be dialoguing with you back and forth and answering questions. We'll wait and reserve that until after decisions are made, and that's how we'll proceed. So we'd like to invite, first, a speaker is an Albert Fox. Would you come forward, please?
Good evening. My name is Albert Fox. I'm a former planning commissioner and a former member of the city council, and I live in Area 6. And I want to address you this evening regarding this proposal and its, I think, future impact on our city. The Sunrise Specific Plan is a focus for family-friendly shopping, dining, and entertainment. That has been our goal for the last several years. Historically, we have a city where we've seen our residents overwhelmingly wanting us as planning commissioners, as city council members, to reject those types of enterprises in our family-friendly areas that create the noise, the smell, the obnoxious part of life that we don't want to have to deal with every day in what is our primary living area. While it can be difficult to find profitable business locations sometimes for some businesses, just because it's difficult to find something doesn't mean we need to make different types of arrangements so that they can come into an area which is not really suited for that use. And I think that's what this overlay plan prohibits and stops. And I think that that's very important for us to consider. The proposal that I like, what I like about the proposal is that it does enforce that belief of family-friendly shopping, entertainment, dining, gathering places. It also enforces those things that make the Sunrise Marketplace in that area a family-friendly walkable zone. Once the new developments comes in, once those things start happening, those will be very nice for our community. Somebody mentioned the electrical charging stations. I will tell you my experience on I-5 on our trip just recently. Large charging area, all the things were set up, and there was this humongous double-stacked diesel generator out there so that when the power source wasn't sufficient to feed the cars, guess what got fired up? An obnoxiously loud commercial rig, basically a D9 Caterpillar, making noise, puffing out smoke, and makes it almost difficult for you to even think when you're around them. Those are the types of things that I think we are trying to prevent here. And with that in mind, I'd very much like to encourage you to support the overlay project, send it to the city council, and give them a strong recommendation that this is the best thing for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Next, we will have Kathy Morris.
Thank you. As a neighborhood association, Chasen, we're very much concerned with what goes on in the city. We, as an organization, a neighborhood organization, it's our role to make sure our neighborhoods are informed of what's going on, and make sure the city knows what our neighborhood residents are interested in. And so to that, excuse me, to that extent, we actually did do a reach out to our neighbors and did quite an email list at last and say, what kind of information do you want? What are you interested in, and what are you not interested in the Sunrise Marketplace corridor? The input was pretty much part of your packet. One of the responses that we got very strongly is, thank you for asking. Thank you for being concerned about what the community wants. And they're pretty clear about what they want, what they don't want. What the community wants is more opportunity to stay in the community, more restaurants, more entertainment, more shopping. A couple of people specifically said, I don't want to go to Roseville to do shopping, I want to stay here. So they want to stay and spend their money here. Very clearly, the input was very strong. No car washes, no gas stations, no on the maintenance thing. Yes to let us stay and have fun and mingle. Yes to be a community. That's what Citrus Heights is, and that's what they want to be. Okay, I know everybody who lives here doesn't work here, and everybody who works here doesn't live here, but it still is a community, and they are concerned about the environment. So as a group, we are very much in favor of the overlay to make sure that we keep the environment for shopping, entertainment, socialization, the way that we want Citrus Heights to be. You asked for community input, and my goodness, they gave it. And I was very proud to get it, and I'm very pleased to share it with you. That's our group's opinion, and it's also my personal opinion. I'm absolutely supportive of the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. All right, Philip, and I'm sorry, is it Jarrett? Jarrett, please.
Okay, I'll try to talk fast for 3 minutes. My name is Philip Jarrett. I'm the owner of 5623 Sunrise Boulevard, the old China Buffet building. 4 years we've had that property vacant. We actually do have a lease prior to us learning about the overlay, which was for Waterfly Car Wash. Now I want to talk maybe two facets, and like I said, I'll do it quick. The first one is as a concerned property owner. I don't think you're going to get, commuters to stop in Citrus Heights to go to dinner if they're commuting back and forth to work down Sunrise Boulevard by themselves. They need their family to do that. That's what I'll say about that. The car wash that we're talking about putting in is a company called Waterfly. They have 2 locations, one in Sacramento and one in Fair Oaks. They have approximately 2,500 members at each location. Each location, the membership is about 60% of their membership is 60% of their business is membership, and almost the entire membership, I think he told me it was 75%, is within a 3-mile radius of the property. When you go to car wash, you load the family in the car, you go get a car wash, you go to dinner, you go to Lowe's, you go to Home Depot. It's a destination business. It's not loud. The vacuums are not loud. They're quieter than a normal conversation. They're the state-of-the-art car wash that you can possibly put up. They're planning stacking stations so there's no traffic congestion. In my opinion, it's the way to go for if you're putting a car wash in there. I understand a lot of people don't believe that car washes are part of the community. With the drought that we're having right now and with what Gavin Newsom has asked for the city of Sacramento and the state of California to save 15 or 20, people don't wash their cars in their driveway anymore. Over 77% of the population wash their cars at a commercial car wash. 77%. I actually made packets for y'all. I don't even know if I'm allowed to give them to you. 77% wash their car at a commercial car wash. It saves money. The Sacramento Water Board recommends that you go to a commercial car wash to wash your car. Don't do it in your driveway. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll ask legal about the packets being distributed at this point?
Yeah, we think that's okay if you want to, we'd like to get a copy at the end.
Okay, very good. We'll allow you to do that. Thank you. Should I do it now or later? I think it'd be all right now, Casey? All right.
The clerk will come get them, Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you. Considering how thick they are, we'll be able to review them before decisions are made. I'm not sure.
We're fast readers.
Okay, oh, they look like they're pretty thick. No, okay, this is specific to the car wash industry itself. Okay, thank you.
And the owner of the car wash was going to be here and had a family emergency and was unable to attend.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, okay. And we also have another Jarrett, Mr. John Jarrett.
This is my brother.
Okay.
Our family owns the car
Yeah,
wash.
just state your name for the.
John Jarrett,
Thank you.
Attorney John Jarrett. Our family owns the car wash. We're not a large corporate behemoth that can develop multi-million-dollar restaurants. We are a small business owner. We think that the overlay attempts to just grant a general prohibition on, instead of taking individual businesses into account. The opinion of the recommendation is to improve the area and to work with existing economic development teams. The last 4 years, they haven't helped us at all. Waterfly, we do have a lease with Waterfly. We've been denied applications to get that in. The thing is about China Buffet, no one stops there. There's no business, there's no traffic. It's a building that's been vacant for some time. I think what we want to do is to create a very nice car wash, to have people stop there with a car. If you drive down that portion of Sunrise Boulevard, that's not really the walking portion of Sunrise Boulevard. The car wash would be up on a berm. It's elevated, it's up, it's out of the way. It's not even close to the street level. You're talking about noise, as Mr. Jarrett said, that the noise would be minimal. You can review the packets. The odor, I don't think there's any odor that comes from the car wash. There's no one loitering there. If you have someone loitering there, it'd be more likely to loiter into a vacant building. That's where you'd have that loitering problem. By having a thriving business there, it would bring economic impact into the city. And I do think that this is just trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist at this point. I mean, you're trying to, I don't think there's a nexus with trying to make a area better with making it just a general prohibition on all these different types of business. What they have to do is they have to be individually looked at and individually evaluated to see if a Waterfly, maybe it may not be good for the community, but maybe it would be good for the community. And by creating this overlay, you're saying, hey, we're just going to put a blanket prohibition on all of it, and we're not even going to consider this, when in fact it might be positive for the city. I think having an overlay would devalue the property for the property owners. This is going to restrict our use and our ability to use our property. This is property that was purchased for commercial reasons, and it's devaluing this by restricting what our use is. And I just hope that the Planning Commission and the City Council just does not adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. And next we'll have is it Kathleen Carpenter?
Good evening, Kathy Lynn Carpenter. I'm the Executive Director of the Sunrise Marketplace, and our board was unable to reach consensus on this overlay, so I am not here either in support or opposition. I did want to make a few points and some feedback from what did happen at the board meeting. I also like to say that mini storage was not brought up at our meeting, so we weren't able to discuss that. I do have an owner who's interested in a mini storage, perhaps behind the Econo Lube. the vacant space there. Isn't a whole lot you can put there. It butts up to the housing. Some of that housing is already problematic, the way it interacts with the shopping centers. I'm talking about Mitchell Ranch. The taxi, that kind of thing, we're not, we don't oppose that. We are opposed to the transit center for the Sunrise Mall, so it doesn't belong on Sunrise, so we're certainly not opposed to the other uses. Some supported the ban. Most were okay with a membership style, a locally oriented type of car wash, but did not want to see gas stations. I pulled some geo-tracking numbers, and it is, as Mr. Jarrett said, very local. I pulled some outflow numbers to see, are they going anywhere? And they were visiting other businesses. I pulled some geo and outflow information for Quick Quack. Same thing, they're going to Lowe's, they're going to Walmart, they're going to Marshall's. Also, about 75% within our 2 to 3 mile area. So again, that's just information. It's not meant to be in support or opposition. These are very difficult sites, the 2 sites in question here, Marie Callender's and China Buffet. So the city has got to step up with financial incentives and some aggressive solicitation. We have not seen that in the past, but if you're going to restrict a use, then we've got to help them. We appreciate what the community wants, and we want those things too. I don't think I would disagree. God, I'm running out of time. I don't think I would disagree with anything that was said tonight, but I think we all have to accept that restaurants, these things are not coming back. Sit-down restaurants are not coming back for many years. I've been here 22 years. It's my job to follow the trends, to understand the industry. They're not coming back. Right now, it's fast casual, and even that's curbside pickup, takeout, delivery, because they can't get the employees. And so this is how they're having to operate right now. So we have to accept this could be empty for many years. The problems with the transients are vast. And so, again, we need the city to address those issues. It's very costly for the property owner. We spend $300,000 a year on security and porter service, and we just play whack-a-mole. But they have to spend the money of broken windows, cleaning graffiti, and those 2 buildings are our most hit buildings because they are vacant. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oops. Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Okay, and I think the last one would be a Susan Baker.
Hi, my name is Susan Baker, and I'm with El Tapatio Mexican Restaurant. And we are very much in favor of the direction that the city of Citrus Heights is taking with the overlay, because we want to keep the Sunrise Marketplace area as an entertainment venue, shopping, retail, and restaurants. We have found that it's been beneficial to our business, as we are an unknown entity. When we came here 7 years ago now, and being in the middle of a thriving shopping area allowed us to grow rapidly. Nobody knew who we were. We are a tiny, tiny chain that came out of Oregon, and we have grown dramatically. We appreciate all the people in the Citrus Heights area and the surrounding areas that come to our restaurant. More importantly, that I don't think a lot of people understand, we are a restaurant that the majority of our customers, or guests as we call them, come from outlying areas. We have guests that come from 2 to 3 hours away, once to twice a month. And when they're here, they shop at other shops. They go to other restaurants. They go to doctor's appointments. They go to Target. They go to Home Depot, Lowe's, all the different things in the area. And it's amazing if you take the time to talk to the guests who walk in, how much they love coming to the area. Comment was made when people are driving by, they don't stop. I don't know how many guests, because I go out when I'm here and talk to guests individually in the dining room, that guest that comes, have you been here before? No, it's my first time. I kept driving by, finally decided to stop, came a couple times, and then I brought my family, and now we come all the time. They're now coming to Citrus Heights. And when they're here, then they end up shopping, dining, And I believe that we can bring even more strong restaurants to our area. The more restaurants you have in an area, the more people come to dine. So if one is too busy, they go to another one. We have 2-hour waits many times. We have 97 employees. Okay? We will continue to employ. We are continuing to grow. Our sales are still growing. We survived COVID, and we continue to grow during COVID. I don't think the restaurant industry in the sit-down, if you are a good service restaurant, take good care of your guests, we will continue to grow. And we need more of them, and we need the community to support us, which they have done. We oppose changes to our specific parcel as it would create a different vibe for our guests. People come in, they enjoy it. We have a reciprocal parking agreement for the entire overlay of the 4 parcels. And if we had different ingress and egress issues with a car wash or other kinds of businesses, and I guess I'm done. But we want to thank you all very much. Would love to be able to talk some more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Did I miss anyone? Any other papers coming? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you all for sharing. And I will open for further comment to the commissioners and staff. Clarifying questions, any other comments, thoughts?
Well, the only comment, as I've already said, I mean, I understand the comments that were made. I'm not surprised about some of the comments concerning existing property owners. But I still hold to the position that I think this is what needs to be done to guarantee or to make the best efforts to try to make this corridor really important to Citrus Heights, and looking forward not only now, but in the future. And there's no guarantees, but I think this gives us the best opportunity to achieve that. And so that's why I support it.
Yeah, I agree with the commissioner. Yeah, it's definitely a solid plan. It kind of goes along and adheres with the general plan as well as what the council wants to do, right? They want to make sure that people come in, they live here, they shop here, et cetera. And if it's going to deter people from living here or shopping, I don't think it's a great approach. And honestly, maybe unpopular opinion, maybe we should expand this to the whole city. Overlay that. I think as many people have said, many residents, we have enough gas stations, we have enough of these services, but that's beyond this conversation. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You know, I support this. I started managing restaurants since 1988 on Sunrise Boulevard. In fact, that same building, I was the general manager of the El Torito there. But I really believe, you know, I agree with this motion, but I really feel that the city needs to work with the property owners because, you know, there's got to be some kind of incentive to bring businesses to this area. Can't just demand that they recruit their own because those buildings, you know, the old Bobby McGee's, Peppermill, those buildings, you know, even the old Elephant Bar, they're just deteriorated buildings, and the infrastructure on it, they need to redo everything in it, the sewer lines. And it's going to be tough for these property owners to try and fill those vacancies. So I think if the city were willing, you know, I know Rhonda Sherman used to go to ICSC conventions and, you know, go to National Restaurant Association shows. I think there's more that the city can do, especially with ARPA funding, because a lot of this happened because of COVID. And if the city can help, I fully support this.
And thank you. Thank you all for sharing tonight. And we're often alone in the chamber, so it's nice to have you all here, and your comments are definitely interesting to listen to. So, you know, I have the pleasure of living here in Citrus Heights. I love this city. I work in another city. I bought a building myself 8 years ago, and it was quickly surrounded with gas stations and car dealerships and repair shops, and even a marijuana shop on the corner. And talk about devaluing a building. It did that rapidly for me. And so I sit on this side, understanding what it is to be a business owner, because I am one. I also understand when I bought my building, I expected to be in a much better position, and because of what it's been surrounded with and allowed to be surrounded with, I'm sitting in a much unfavorable situation with my building. So while I agree with my fellow commissioners, I am in support of this type of overlay for the city, and especially because of what Casey and Allison have so beautifully demonstrated, is that we've got a future here in Citrus Heights. Plan on living here for a while. I want my kids to live here, and I want them to be able to enjoy a beautiful downtown, and I think we're developing that and on our way to do that. That said, for the car wash, I do get my car washed regularly on a weekly basis. I am a member of one of the local car washes here. I wish I had had this. This would have been very helpful information prior to us deciding tonight what we're going to do with this, because I think there is something to be said about, or at least to consider, about the specific car wash that I'm a member of. I find it very convenient to go to. I even leave my car there and walk across the street and do some shopping. So that's a different type of car wash, I know, but I'm also a member car wash where I drive through because I don't want any dust on my car. So I understand this. I just wish I had I wish I had known some of the ordinances with that car wash prior to this meeting. So I don't know that we're going to have time to read through this. It looks like there's at least 10 pages tonight. So, but all in all, what I have to say is that I am in favor of what the city is doing here, and I strongly support it. So with that, I will entertain a motion from the commission. And I would also like to say that there's only 4 of us, but we are still a quorum, so we can move forward with a motion tonight.
I will make a motion to recommend the City Council adopt a resolution to find the proposed amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, under Section 15061B3 of the guidelines, and that adoption of the proposed ordinance will not result in any impacts on the physical environment.
I'll second.
Stacy, do you need a roll on this, or, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion, and aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and I'll entertain that second motion.
I move to recommend the city council adopt an ordinance adding section 106.28.050 to chapter 106 of the City of Citrus Heights Municipal Code, zoning code section, as shown in Exhibit A, and amend the zoning code to include the Sunrise Marketplace Overlay District, as shown in Exhibit B.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And I believe we are ready for the next item.
Regular calendar, and we have none.
Thank you. Next item, please.
General correspondence, presentations, and reports from city staff. I believe we have none.
Okay, and I believe we are
Adjournment.
none. Very good. Then I will call this meeting adjourned at 8:04. Thank you so much.